Hello everyone. This module provides a brief overview or summary, if you will, of all of the content that we've covered throughout the last several modules. They have, if you will, provided profiles of diverse populations. They presented historical, cultural, and socio-political information. Profiles on 10 cultural diverse groups were covered: African Americans, Asian American and Pacific Islanders, Native American and First Nations people, Latinos or Hispanics, biracial, multiracial persons, immigrant, refugees, Arab and Muslim Americans, women, LGBTQ individuals, older adults, and persons with disabilities. Other culturally diverse groups were not covered, as the ones that we did cover in detail throughout the previous modules represent the largest majority of clients that we may work with within the field of social work. We could never really exhaust a list of every cultural group, as many are a cross-section of the various cultural backgrounds that we have just previously discussed. The profile information provided in the past few modules is presented mainly as a guideline for students to continue their study of the diverse groups in society. They are not meant as a definitive guideline, and if used in such a manner would foster stereotypes. Rather, they are presented here as a resource for further investigation and study. The profiles of these culturally diverse groups discuss how issues such as income, poverty, education, unemployment, physical and mental health, stereotyping, prejudice, and discrimination impact the life status, well-being, and overall functioning of these diverse populations. As in previous modules, all profiles are accompanied by the implications for social work practice, as well as a guideline. The racial and ethnic group profiles discussed issues such as worldview orientations, cultural values, religious, spiritual, and faith belief systems, family values, dynamics and structure, parenting styles, and gender role expectations. In addition, these modules discussed how the unique socio-political and historical experiences of each racial and/or ethnic group, such as slavery of African Americans, the colonization of First Nations peoples, Native Americans, the refugee and/or immigration experience, as well as those of Arab and Muslim Americans, also Asian and/or Latino, Hispanic, refugee and immigrants, the list goes on. It set the context for specific social and psychological issues such as the double consciousness of African Americans, the historical trauma syndrome for First Nations peoples and Native Americans, difficulties and hardships of the immigration, refugee, and/or Arab Muslim experience, the obstacles to pathways to legal residency and citizenship for Asian and Latinos, refugees and immigrants, or Arab and Muslim Americans. It also covered the individual acculturation issues and couple and family acculturation tensions and conflicts for all ethnic and/or racial groups, monoracial versus multiracial, recognition, racial ambiguity, the "what are you?" question posed to biracial and/or multiracial individuals, as well as the myths and stereotypes associated with biracial, multiracial individuals, interracial couples, and biracial or multiracial children. The immigrant, refugee, and Arab Muslim American profile discussed the difference and similarities between each of these groups and their experiences. People who were forced to migrate due to political, religious, or ethnic persecution, immigrants whose people chose to leave their home country for a variety of reasons, Arab and Muslim Americans who have experienced hate crimes and an overwhelmingly unwelcoming message by society who most often confuses or is ignorant to the true values and strengths of this large group of individuals. Moreover, these profiles address the impact that pre-immigration circumstances, the post-immigration period, employment issues for undocumented individuals, pre-9/11 and post-9/11 views on the Muslim community, and the impact of acculturation, mental and physical health, and family life. The profile on women provided information about the sexist nature of our society and how their subordinate status in society create educational inequities for women and result in economic disparities, gender role stereotypes, and assumptions that serve as barriers to career choices and obstacles to employment opportunities and promotion. Gender disparities in income levels versus educational attainment and occupational status, sexual harassment and abuse experienced by females in the workplace, in the military, and at school, how inmate partner violence disproportionately affect gender biases, and the overassessment of certain mental health diagnostic categories, also male-oriented and sexist theories, and the gender bias and lack of gender sensitivity in some theoretical frameworks, still being utilized by the helping profession. The profile on persons identified as lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgendered individuals who identify as queer, who are questioning their sexuality, known as LGBTQ, discussed the misconceptions about same-sex relationships, LGBT parents, couples and families, LGBTQ youth and identity issues, the coming out process, aging, depression, suicide, and substance abuse, HIV, the Respect for Marriage Act, a legislative effort to repeal the Defense on Marriage Act, the 1996 federal law banning gay marriage, impact of heterosexism on the life and well-being of LGBT individuals and couples, challenges in parenting and the obstacles in adopting children for LGBTQ persons given prejudicial attitudes and behaviors that exist in their children's schools and other pivotal institutions, LGBTQ persons of color, and a multitude of heterosexist attitudes, misinformation, lack of information in working with the LGBTQ population, children, adults, couples, and families, including but not limited to recognizing and/or the willingness to acknowledge the impact of the effect of societal prejudice and psychological marginalization on the physical and mental health on LGBTQ individuals. The profile on older adults discussed ageism and our youth-oriented society, misconceptions and lack of information about the sexuality of older adults, poverty, physical and mental health, and cognitive functioning, elder abuse and neglect, depression and suicide, and substance abuse with older adults. The profile on persons with disabilities discussed the attitudes and reactions to persons with disabilities, ableism, and its impact on employment, the Americans with Disability Act, government health insurance, myths of people with disabilities, social and mental health service programs, life satisfaction and suicide, sexuality and reproductions of persons with disabilities. There was a vast group of diverse clients that at any point we can encounter or be in a position to help a diverse group. But there is always danger in prescriptions or recommendations or even guidelines related to social work practice with specific populations. By virtue of providing a snapshot of a particular group, one must ultimately choose attributes or characteristics that must be included or excluded. Providing a thumbnail sketch of a racial and or ethnic minority group, for example, may lead to perpetuating stereotypes or simplifying the complexity of a group's cultural heritage, values, history, and current status in the United States. It may minimize the importance of recognizing within group or subgroup the differences, such as the fact that the term Asian American or Pacific Islander comprises some 50 distinct identifiable groups within that population alone. Yet, as social workers, we are faced with the realization that we must occasionally generalize and take the first step in learning about overall group differences as we become more attuned to subgroup characteristics. Further, we must recognize that our education is lifelong in nature. These profiles that were covered in these last several modules are useful in suggesting strategies that social workers can utilize to maximize health and well-being and minimize harm. And again, while the recommendations are stated explicitly, social workers must understand the rational and conceptual framework before applying them. They cannot be applied mechanistically and out of context of the ecological perspective. Every individual is different, and every individual comes with their own individual ways of wanting to deal or readiness to handle the situation that they are in. Uninformed application may result in cultural oppression rather than liberation. These profiles should never be rigidly applied without regard for group differences, subgroup variations, individual differences, and the specific life circumstances of clients and the systems that impact their lives. To do so borders on stereotyping and would be at best non-beneficial to clients, and at worst harmful and oppressive. So I hope that this course opened a door to the awareness and knowledge towards certain generalization groups and piqued your interest in furthering your knowledge and awareness so that the skills needed to provide culturally incompetent, relevant services will become second nature to you. And I welcome you to continue to further that interest in finding out more about any of these various subsection of cultures that we have just reviewed.